Gonna go live and we're gonna check audio. My phone will catch up at some point. Hopefully this is working. Nobody's in the chat yet, so it's fine. All right, we're good. So, let some people trickle in here if anyone does. I'm sure most of you are over watching Auburn fans melt down after just collapsing against Penn State today. But the Crimson Tide roll 63-7 over Louisiana Monroe. Revenge for that non-conference loss from 2007. Sweet, sweet revenge. I'm sure Nick Saban is so happy right now. Or maybe not, because there are some things to talk about despite the score being 63-7. It very easily could have been 70-7. They took a knee at the end of the game, which classy, but they could have scored more. But first, I'm Zach Aurelius here at the Voice of College Football, part of Mark Rogers TV. Thanks to Mark again for letting us do this. You know, not just me, but channels all over the place for every college football team that you can think of that lots of people care about. Florida, USC, of course, Alabama, Auburn, Penn State, whoever. So thank you for letting us do this. Subscribe, like the video, and you'll get a lot of great content as the weeks go on. As we now hit week 3, there's always 1 week a year that's always really slow. And this might be that week. Hopefully the nightcap games are great. LSU Mississippi State is a game. Not a great game, but it's a game. So good for them. Anyway, what do you talk about in a 63-7 game? Well, when you're a team like Alabama and you're playing for a national championship, and that's your goal, and you see what Georgia did to South Carolina today, that's unhuman. That wasn't fair. It's illegal in 7 countries for what South Carolina had happen to them. So you have to compare yourselves to Georgia. These two teams are going to play in 2.5 months or so, and we get into Atlanta and the SEC championship game, barring something crazy, which, hey, you know, things happen. But that's the bar you have to set for yourself is Georgia. And what happened today was, for the first half, Alabama offensively looked really sloppy. Run game couldn't get anything going. Passing, the nerve before the season started, what everybody was nervous about with Alabama was how are they going to replace John Mechie and Jamison Williams, who are both now in the NFL? And, of course, the year before that was how are they going to replace Devontae Smith? So, safe to say Alabama's had a track record of being able to replace guys. And they brought in some transfers. Harrell hasn't even played yet, kid from Louisville. So, we'll have to wait and see about him. And he might have to be the breakout piece because everybody else just is not up to snuff right now. And today it showed early in the pass game, they couldn't get anything going. And Bryce had all day to throw for a lot of this game. He was just sitting and waiting and waiting and waiting. And eventually a Monroe player, a Warhawk, would come up and he'd have to throw it away. He'd have to run downfield for a couple yards, or he'd check it down to Gibbs. That just can't keep happening. I mean, Jermaine Burton came in with all the exposure, he's going to be the next guy. 1 catch, 16 yards today. That's all he did. He wasn't great last week either, and he wasn't good in the first game against Utah State. Now, that might be time. This might be getting time to gel, but it's not promising And there was a great point brought up by a number of people across the internet when talking about last week's game, and they broke it down this week, and it's a great point. When Bryce Young just goes up to the line and runs a play, this Alabama offense is pretty good, as it's going to be with the talent they have. Where they come into trouble is when the play clock's getting to like 7 and 6, and Bryce is still making checks, and he's still looking to the sideline. And when that happens, that's you're keying the defense, and it's where things go to die. When they had 5 straight drives of like 3 and out, or maybe 1 first down, I don't remember the exact number last week against Texas. That was a lot of it. 15 on the play clock. He's up at the line of scrimmage, tapping his lineman, checking a play. He's going back to his spot in the shotgun. He's looking to his running back. He's looking to the sideline. All of a sudden, there's 5 seconds on the play clock, and he's got to snap it, and he gets confused because maybe a safety rolls or a linebacker goes to where a wrong pre-snap read. He's not Tom Brady back there. He's a sophomore in college, or redshirt sophomore. So not expecting him to break down a defense at every level yet. But when they try to do that, that offense really slows down. And the offensive line in the run game today, nothing special. It's Louisiana Monroe. You should be running for, as they did. Excuse me. They ran for 7 yards a carry, which is good, but that's what they should be doing. But there wasn't a lot of consistency in the run game, bringing up the box scores, and no real explosiveness, no long game, a long of 25, and that was from Monroe coming in at the end of the game playing quarterback. And we talked about it in the first game with Monroe, and we'll cut to him here for a second. There are some teams in the country where if their quarterback goes down, obviously they're not in a good spot, but they could be okay. And this is before the season. We talked about, well, if Haynes King goes down for Texas A&M, Max Johnson will be fine. Well, turns out Haynes King is really bad at football, at least at this point, so he's going to play anyway. Jaden Daniels goes down for LSU. Nussmeier will go in, and it'll be a drop-off, but it won't be an absurd drop-off. If Bryce Young goes down and Monroe has to start, Alabama could lose 3 games. He still cannot throw. He threw he was 0 for 2 today.
Wow, that was a blast from the past, Dari.
Oops.
Mississippi State.
I pulled up a tab to have stats, and the live stream started coming out. He was 0 for 2, missed a couple really easy throws. Just not – I pulled up live stats on my phone. Not an easy game for him. His mechanics look weird. I don't know. I'm just not confident if you had to say you were playing – I'm trying to think of a lower tier SEC team. If they were playing Ole Miss, who's a pretty good team, and they beat the crowd out of Georgia Tech today, but I think we can all admit Georgia Tech is awful, and Ole Miss probably isn't quite at that level this year. I would not be confident that Alabama would win that game convincingly. I think they would struggle for points. But we'll find. I mean, hopefully he doesn't get hurt, because Bryce Young is a special talent. He's going to be a top 5 pick in next year's draft. Ty Simpson came in for a little bit, and all he did was hand the ball off. So nothing to read there, and there wouldn't have been anyway. These games are interesting because the only thing you can find is negatives, and we've talked about this before. You ran for 7 yards a carry. Great. That's what you should do against Louisiana Monroe. There's no positive there. You can say, oh, the O-line looked better against Louisiana Monroe. All you can find is negatives. Is what is your team not doing? Why aren't you doing – why is Bryce Young only throwing for 236 yards? Why is he throwing for 2 picks? The first pick was the worst decision I've ever seen him make on a football field. Backed up. He had plenty of time. He was just standing there in the pocket, which, good job. He didn't just scramble out like Jaden Daniels would. He starts rolling to he gets a little pressure. He rolls to his right. And then, I don't even know who was open downfield, because there was, in the screen, all there was a Warhawk, and he just threw it, and it got picked. The second pick seemed more like a normal interception. He just misread something, and it got picked. Like, that happens. You can excuse those sometimes, but the first pick was very un-Bryce Young-like. What was special today for Alabama were the special teams. That poor Louisiana Monroe. Every time they went back to punt, here comes McKinstry. He had 5 punt returns, 136 yards, which is 27.2 yards per return for those of you who don't want to do the math. 44 yards is the long. Every time he there were a couple. There was one too where he only got like 15 yards, and he barely stepped out, or he would have gone. It felt all game. Okay, when's he gonna go? When's he gonna go? When's he gonna go? And then he gets pulled. Brian Branch comes in, and he gets the punt return for the touchdown. He goes 68 yards. Even in the kick return, they had one kick return. It was Gibbs, 57-yard return. Just absurd stuff from the Crimson Tide. Defense, I mean, what can you say about the defense? Will Anderson with his first interception and picked any touchdown, which hilarious. They just overwhelmed. Anytime they did anything that wasn't just a base defense, Louisiana Monroe had no chance. That poor quarterback. And does the website have their live stats up? Oh, let's go. So I can get like defensive stats, because ESPN doesn't provide those for me. We want defense, and we want the Crimson Tides. Toto, 2 tackles for a loss. That, Will Anderson, kind of a weird game for him. He only had 1 tackle for a loss. He did have the pick 6 though, so you can't be too upset. He also had another tackle for a loss where he horse collared a guy. So he should have had 2, because he didn't need to horse collar him. He's been a little out of control this year. He a couple offsides penalties. He had the 1 late hit penalty. He had the horse collar for, how amped is he? He's looking to break like Derek Thomas's tackles for a loss record, which is absurd. He's looking to go to New York for the Heisman ceremony. Understandably, he's really excited to play football, and he's going to be a top 3 pick in next year's draft. Just calm down, big fella. It is funny watching him, though, as he gets a pressure. There was a 1 pressure today where I audibly laughed out loud. He got up the middle, and the Monroe quarterback just got rid of it just in time. Nick of time, he got rid of it. And Will Anderson just shoved him to the ground. Like, nonchalant shove. Like, he didn't look like he pushed him very hard, but it wasn't like he wasn't falling like, I'm trying to draw a flag. Like, it legit, there was some weight behind it, but it just looked so nonchalant, which is incredible. Starting quarterback 11 Rogers for the Warhawks, 11 for 21. He threw. The pick was tipped, but he did have the 1 interception, only 96 yards, so he's under 5 yards an attempt. That's pretty good for a defense. I'm going to pull that because I want my name to be up there. That's pretty good for a defense. They gave up the 1 drive that I'm sure the players will see in every film room session this week. Let me pull it up. Yeah, an 8 play drive, 4-yard run, 10-yard run, 1-yard run, a 13-yard pass. And you could tell Nick did not like that one, as he shouldn't. 6-yard one, a 1-yard run, and then an 11-yard pass and an 11-yard touchdown run. And that cut it to 28-7 at the time. And at that point, the Alabama offense just stuck. Like, here's the Alabama offense. First drive, touchdown. Cool. That was the Trayshawn Holden 33-yard. And then they threw a pick. Then interception, touchdown, punt return for a touchdown. Then they punted. So then another touchdown. They weren't on the field for a while. 7-yard run. No, another touchdown run, punt, and then Alabama turned it over on downs, punt, and then another touchdown to end the half. But their offense just looked sluggish. Receivers weren't gaining separation, and that's how you end up with some of these guys' numbers. They just, and this was mostly in the first half. What does help is offensively, in the run game, they were doing whatever they wanted. They were getting 7 yards a pop. Now, again, when you're competing for a national championship, you have to compare yourself to the other teams competing for that title. And the number one choice is, of course, Georgia. And Georgia played a South Carolina team that I'll assume is better than Louisiana Monroe. Well, they haven't looked that good this year. And Georgia was averaging 6 yards a rush. And they dominate 547 yards. They're only 306 for. I turned that game off. I'm going to be honest with you, folks. Rattler, not good. That is not surprising at all. So the camaraderie between Bryce Young and his receivers, and hopefully that helps when Harrell comes back. He hasn't played at all. I doubt they'll need him next week. They play Vanderbilt. You're 3-1 Vanderbilt Commodores, by the way. Good for them. Good for Vanderbilt. But then they go on the road to Arkansas October 1st, and that could be an issue. Arkansas looks really good. And as I say that, they're losing 10-0 to Missouri State. So what do I know? Let's look at some other scores real quick. Nothing really happening right now. It's been a mostly blowout. I got LSU, Mississippi State right in front of me. Does it make any of the rest of you really uncomfortable that a Mike Leach team is a better offense or a better defense than offense? Because it makes me uncomfortable. Yeah, leave comments, questions. What is your takeaway from a 63-7 win for the Crimson Tide, where they turned the ball over twice and they kneeled it with, there's like 3 minutes left, maybe slightly under, like 2.5. And they were kneeling it at the 8-yard line. Very easily could have punched in another touchdown, but didn't, and that's okay. That's, it's classy. It's what we like to see. I'm sure UL Monroe and people get the point that Alabama is in fact better than the Warhawks. And what I mean by that inconsistency is, and it shows here as I keep looking at these live stats and just trying to gauge everything a little bit more. I went live quicker than I normally do. Alabama's only 1 for 6 on third down. Only 1 for, that's not. Louisiana Monroe was 4 for 17, which also is horrible, but it was better than Alabama percentage-wise. Bama 1 for 3 on fourth down. So, take one of those third down conversions. They got it on fourth. So, but they went then 2 of what? I'm not doing that math. 2 of 9 on those conversions. Not good enough. Not good enough when we get into the later part of the season. And they're playing teams with a pulse that are trying, that have the talent up front that could beat you. Only gave up 2.2 yards per rush. Penalties were a bit of an issue, 6 for 60. Will Anderson had the one big one. And Louisiana Monroe, 36 minutes of possession. Only 23 for Alabama. Now, part of that was when you're getting 8, 9, 10 yards every run, it may not be an explosive 40-yard run, but when you are getting that, your drives tend to go a little quicker. Also, as we got towards the end of the game, both teams were just kind of holding on to it, like, all right, let's end this. It's over. It's 56-7 or whatever. So, But it was a lot of fun in today's. A lot of fireworks. I'm sure Alabama fans who stayed had a fun time, which is always important. What else really is there to talk about? Leave your comments, leave your questions. We'll be back next week. For Vanderbilt. Then we'll be back the 1st for Arkansas. I won't be here the 8th, I think, unless something changes, which hopefully it doesn't, because I have a wedding that day. But that A&M game is looking lesser and lesser exciting as the weeks go by, unfortunately. You know, when the season started, I was like, that's going to be probably the biggest game of the year. Like, probably not going to be able to do this, but it's going to be Arkansas in 2 weeks, especially if A&M loses tonight to Miami, which I think they will, unless Max Johnson isn't awful, which I don't think he is. All right, Washington, good for you. This Mississippi State LSU game is atrocious, guys. But anyway, drop a comment. Anything you guys saw that we haven't talked about today? Wide receiver play hasn't been good for Alabama all year long. Not up to the standard we expect from Alabama receivers. The running game today was better. It's Louisiana Monroe. Congrats. Like, it should be better. The defense was fine. Only gave up the one real drive. And when you're playing like they shut out Utah State a couple weeks ago, but when you're playing a Division I team, even if it's an FCS team, you're going to be hard turned to shut anybody out. They're going to hit a play. Like, they're still Division I athletes. They're still going to have plenty of pride, and they're still going to have plenty of ability. So giving up one touchdown drive, like, it happens. I'm sure Nick will chew him out for it, but it from an outsider, it happens, Holy cow, a big play. Let's see if any of you comment real quick. All righty. Go back to my stats. Stats are important. They only tell you exactly what happened. Yeah, Monroe 0 for 2. Yeah, Bryce was 13.1 yards per attempt. Everything just seemed a little off. With the receivers, I mean, Latu had 3 catches for 51 yards. He's a tight end, so I know that's Georgia's entire offense is through their tight end. But when you have, goodness gracious, Darnell Washington, Brock Bowers, Eric Gilbert, and another 5-star freshman, I think you can run your offense through tight ends. Brock Bowers had, a 70-yard touchdown today? He's not fair. But so Latu, 3 catches, 51 yards. Gibbs, 4 catches, 65 yards. He also had a touchdown. And a long one for 37 yards. So if you look at the receivers, as I try to do some quick math, 60 plus 29 is 89, plus 16, 105, 120 yards on 3, 4, 5, 6 catches. 6 catches for 125 yards for the receivers today for Alabama. That's not good enough. That won't get it done. That's prime opportunity for a team, not even Arkansas's caliber, which, again, we'll see what that kind of caliber is they play Missouri State in the return of Bobby Petrino. If everybody in that student section wasn't wearing a neck brace, they're doing it wrong. But I think I saw a video where a good handful of them were. So good for you, Razorback fans. A team like Arkansas, a team like even Mississippi State, because you look down the line. See, I think Mississippi State is the first week in November. No, ESPN, I don't want you to go all the way back to, oh, goodness gracious. Yeah. No. When is it? It's not the 12th. Oh, okay, it's week 8, so it's October 18th. That's a big look-ahead game. You got a big trip to Knoxville. That's going to be another game that Tennessee or Alabama, if this receiver play doesn't improve, could drop. But in between a trip to Knoxville and the bye, you got a little sneaky visit from the boys from Starkville, who, if you're watching this game right now, that defense is really good. Someone hired Zach Arnett yesterday. And someone hired Lance Leipold from Kansas. He's too good for that school. Anyway. Oh, Jaden, you got to hit that. He's so bad. So this needs to pick up, or these teams can trip you up. Tennessee, Arkansas, Mississippi State. I mean, we said this too about Auburn last year. We're like, and then there's teams like you should blow out like Auburn, but we said that last year. And I mean, that was an escape from Jordan Hare. But as we all know, weird things happen in Jordan Hare, except apparently when Penn State comes to town, because then they just get smoked, like they got smoked today. Go to Ole Miss, the 12th. It could be interesting. But I wouldn't pick Ole Miss to be one of the. But suffice to say, they need to pick things up at wide receiver. They need to be more explosive in the run game. We talked about this last year a lot. Goofy cats. We talked about this last year in the run game a lot. They didn't have an explosive run game. Brian Robinson's a good back. He's doing better apparently. He's goofy cats. He's running, he's at practice, so thank goodness he's all right. But he wasn't explosive last year at Alabama. You weren't seeing the Najee Harris 40-yard run, 50-yard run, 20-yard run. It was more like here's 6, here's 5, here's 4, which is fine. But the issue comes, and we saw it against some teams. If you can't make explosive plays, you're leading to more variability, because in college, especially with most of these kids aren't going to be in the NFL, despite them playing in Alabama, or they're not going to be NFL stars. They're still young. If you can't make explosive plays, one false start, a hold, a drop, a tackle for a gain of for a loss, all of a sudden your drive is ruined, because you aren't. As the problem Iowa's running into, they don't have any explosive ability. So now they're stuck in 2nd and 9, 3rd and 8s. And Alabama is fortunate to have a special quarterback, but you can't rely on that all the time, especially when you have the receiver issues that the Crimson Tide have had this year. And again, let's preface it with this. Receiver issue for Alabama. If you put these receivers on Vanderbilt, or the 3-1 Vanderbilt, I'm going to keep bringing that up because that's so fun, or throw out another, throw out South Carolina, they'd be fine. But for Alabama, you're trying to compete against Georgia. You're trying to compete against Ohio State. I think Oklahoma may have entered that conversation today, although Nebraska just might be awful, like worst team in the Power 5, awful, outside of Georgia Tech. So these issues, somebody needs to step up. Somebody needs to be Bryce's number one go-to. Last year he had 2. He had 1 for intermediate. Like the Chiefs had Tyreek to go deep and Kelsey to go intermediate. Last year, Bryce had Mechie in the intermediate and Jameson going deep. And Jameson almost won a Blitnikoff, became a top, first-round pick. He needs something like that this year. Now, again, Tyler Harrell, he was supposed to kind of be the speed threat. We'll see. Some of these young guys are supposed to catch up to step up, like Ja'Cory Brooks hasn't done it. So that's going to just need to be something that is worked on as the season goes along. Because we are in week 3. I mean, it's still a long way to go. We still got 9 regular season games. The fun is only beginning. Bill Pullian taught high school history. Thanks, ESPN. Happy to know. OSU gets the field goal, 13-10. That happened a little bit ago, but you asked, so I'll tell you. Anyway, I think that'll about wrap it up here. I think we went over everything we needed to go over in a game like this where Alabama just cruises. You know, they'll probably cruise against Vanderbilt next week. That's an improved team, but they'll cruise past Vanderbilt, and then the fun begins. You know, in consecutive weeks, you have Arkansas, you have Texas A&M, you go to Knoxville, and then you go to Knoxville, you got Mississippi State at home, then a bye week, and then you head to LSU. You get a little bit of you go to Ole Miss, then you got a break. You play Austin Peay, and then you got Auburn. So the last 2 games of the year shouldn't be that hard. But we're going to end it here as the fun gets going in college football for the nightcap. Hopefully these are good games. Today's been an awful slate. You can follow me on Twitter at PsychoZ50. You can see all my insane ramblings about college football, movies, what have you. Subscribe to this channel. Subscribe to all our channels. A bunch of people putting in great work every Saturday during the week. Subscribe to our main channel, Moist College Football. Mark does a great job over there. And enjoy the nightcap. Alabama wins 63-7. And you guys have a great rest of your Saturday night. We're going to end the broadcast.